All right, great. So now I'm excited to kick off today's event. So a platform that is accessed by likely mostly everyone on today's call. LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network. They have roughly 800 million members in over 200 countries and territories around the world. LinkedIn was founded in 2003 with the goal of helping professionals achieve more in their careers. And every day their members use LinkedIn's products to make connections, discover opportunities, and gain insights. And with that, I would like to welcome our panelists from LinkedIn. First up, we have Shweta Patira, who is a Senior Engineering Manager, Monica Lewis, Senior Director of Project Management, and Sakshi Jain, Engineering Manager for Responsible AI. Welcome, ladies. And so let's go ahead and get right into the conversation. First off, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love to start out by just asking each of you to share a little bit about yourself with us. So your background, your career journey, and how you got your role at LinkedIn. So Monica, I am going to kick it off to you first here.
Great. Thanks, Courtney. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Monica Lewis. At LinkedIn, I lead our product team that is responsible for our whole job board. So when companies are hiring and when if any of you are looking for a job, my team is responsible for all of that. So side note, if you have any feedback, if you're looking for a job, feel free to reach out. My background, I think I'm the consummate career pivoter. I started off determined to be an astronaut, was the super nerd that I was like, gotta go to MIT. That's where astronauts go. As soon as I got there, it was like, oh, there's other things. I moved into a number of different roles around working on a startup, trying to disintermediate the coffee supply chain. I worked for a while on sustainable energy design, and hopefully I found my groove. I've been at LinkedIn now for coming up on 9 years. And I just love the work that we're doing and the team that I get to work with, the people, and the never-ending challenge and opportunity for growth. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Congrats on 9 years. It's an amazing milestone. Awesome. Sakshi, over to you.
Yeah, hi. So excited to be on this platform. I'm Sakshi. I'm a physicist by training before my current role. I find that through my career journey, I have constantly tried to move more and more towards impact. So from physicist, I used to do quantum computing. Then I moved on to doing more security and statistics. And I actually ended up joining LinkedIn because I wanted to work on a project with them. And they're like, why don't you just hop over? And it's like, okay, why not? And I've been here for 7 years. So it's, I feel like I see so many people so long. There has to be something with LinkedIn. I manage the responsible AI team here, which looks into fairness and privacy and explainability or transparency. So I manage the AI team here for that.
Fabulous. I'm excited to hear more about that later in our call, Sakshi. So thank you. All right. And last but not least, Shweta, over to you.
So excited to be here. Much like Monica, much like most of us, right? Like I also grew up wanting to be an astronaut, but I also grew up in India in a very sort of like lower middle class, very conservative family where gender role expectations were very high. So it was quite hard to even dream big and be ambitious about my career. I still remember at 21, I moved myself to the Middle East to join a startup. I wanted that to be my big break. It turned out to not be my big break at all. It was a bad job, but I was young and broke, and so I stuck around. And then a couple of years later, I took up a bunch of student loans and came to this country with very little money and a lot of debt. And school went well, and since then I've come a long way. I've held quite a few gigs. So worked at Microsoft for their search engine, their first version of their augmented reality product called HoloLens. Then went to MediaTek and worked at HBO for a little while. Then worked at a South Korean startup, and that was fun. And then eventually ended up here at LinkedIn, and I lead a part of the media product engineering team here.
Incredible. What a journey. That's awesome. So thank you all so much for sharing a little bit about your backgrounds. Next up, I would love to hear something about each of you that's not on your LinkedIn profile. So for instance, what do you like to do outside of work, or what's your biggest accomplishment, or maybe even what drew you to a career in tech? For this one, I am going to go to Sakshi first.
Yeah, my favorite topic. So I have, so beyond work, I have always sought for something which is very orthogonal to what I do at work. I find that very, like it helps me grow on a different dimension. So for that, I used to not be at all in athletics, but I trained myself to be a triathlete 4 years back. It was my biggest achievement outside. Just as of now, I'm almost finishing up my training as a yoga teacher. So that is my recent love with yoga. That's what I do.
Amazing. Love it. All right. Shweta, what about you?
Oh, wow, Sakshi, I did not know you were a triathlete. That is so incredible. I cannot even imagine doing that. That's amazing. So I like learning a lot as well. I learn one new skill every year. And so this year, my skill has been shoemaking. And so I'm interning for free with a shoemaker on weekends. And I get to use their studio to learn how to build shoes and eventually one day start my own shoe line.
Wow. It's amazing. Good for you. Awesome. What about you, Monica?
Gosh, I'm having some imposter syndrome here. Not on my LinkedIn profile. I guess I'll give you a 2 for. I'm a mom. I have a 3.5-year-old and a 6-month-old, both girls. And I love DIY and doing things myself. And I try to be really deliberate. Whenever something breaks in the house or we need to assemble something, I'm like, come on, Lucy, we're going to do it. Get out the drill, get out the whatever. The recent project was a couple of tiles had like fallen off of our fireplace. And so we went to Home Depot together. She's like sitting in the cart and we got the mortar. Gosh, is it mortar? We got the compound we needed and put it back together. So I just really enjoyed doing that and being able to share that with my daughters and hopefully like open their mind around, you know, something you were talking about, Shweta, in terms of gender roles, like whatever, like you can do anything. So that's mine.
I was going to say, yeah, that's amazing. I mean, a great skill to know in general, but also, again, like you said, breaking down gender stereotypes. We love it. All right, great. Okay, so next, just to pivot a little bit. So as technologists, what do you find most interesting about your work? And more specifically, are there any projects that you're currently working on that you're particularly excited about? Shweta, let's start with you on this one.
Sure. My biggest, I guess, fulfillment or gratification comes from when I can see and touch the products that my teams build. And so media has been my sort of like it's been my passion for a long time now. And everywhere I go, I try to understand how sort of media players work and how media streaming works and how live streaming works. And these are all things that I find a lot of joy in. And so, yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Monica, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I love the intersection of technology and people. And that makes LinkedIn a fun place to work because, you know, at the end of the day, LinkedIn really is about the people. A problem that our team is chipping away at right now is when you're looking for a job, how do you get a closer connection to the person on the other side as a job seeker? So we're investing a lot in, hey, how do we help job seekers indicate that they're hiring? How do we help hiring managers share that and create more of a sense of like human connection and community around it? So that's been something that's been a lot of fun and challenging to work on.
Fabulous. Sakshi, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's very much on the lines of Shweta wanting to see the impact in front and Monica in terms of the professional network and connecting with people. For me, as I said, I actually took a drop from my PhD because I wanted to just see more reality in terms of my work getting translated. So in LinkedIn, the fact that it is helping with the professional network and it is helping people find opportunities has been a big driver for my motivation, especially coming from my background where I know, especially for females and people from underrepresented groups, it's difficult to get those opportunities, and network can make a huge difference. As of now, I feel like I'm in my dream job because like I have always wanted to figure out how can I match my skill set with impact, social impact. And it's like, okay, right now I'm in responsibility. I was like, this is the perfect blend for me. So I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. And definitely, I think the goal for all of us. So wonderful to hear that you found that at LinkedIn. All right, great. So now that we know a little bit about our panelists, want to dive into kind of the bulk of our conversation here today, which again is around building a career in a more equitable world of work. So each of you shared a little bit about some of the projects that you're doing within your roles. Would love to hear a little bit more about how LinkedIn is building products that are focused on equity and inclusion. So Monica, let's go to you first here.
Sure. It starts from LinkedIn's overall vision, which is really about creating economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And the like add to that we thought about is how do we create equitable opportunity for every member of the global workforce, right? Our work isn't done if we're only helping a portion of our members realize value or different levels of value. And we thought a lot about how structurally do we do this? Is it, hey, we have a dedicated team, the diversity inclusion team, or is it, oh, we just need to weave this throughout every team? And we've actually decided to do both. There's a dedicated team because it turns out there's a lot of work to do to understand and define what that means, what it looks like, what our overall strategy should be. And it's not just a product problem, actually. We need to think about it within our teams and how we're showing up when we're hiring, how we're supporting employees. But then it's also part of everyone's work in terms of every feature that we build. We're seeking to understand how it's distributing opportunity, either across members based on how connected they are, what their backgrounds are, even gender, race, ethnicity, and so forth. And so I'd say it's that overall model that we're taking that has been helpful, but obviously it's a journey and one that we're all on in terms of learning. And in some ways we approach it like other areas where you have an idea of what problem do we want to solve? What do we think the best way to solve it is? How do we shorten that time horizon over which we can test the idea, get data and feedback? But in equity inclusion, there's obviously a lot of other layers of responsibility that we need to take in terms of really deeply understanding our members, particularly more vulnerable members, and making sure that we're, not just trying to solve the problem, but bringing them along the journey and doing it in a way that can really resonate for them. So that's sort of the high level. Shweta, do you want to talk to the skills path efforts?
Absolutely. I'd love to jump in here. A little bit different from what Monica was saying. Another initiative that I personally find super inspiring is what we call skills path. And the goal here is how do we move the world closer to hiring for skills, not schools. Right. And so we know that requiring a medical degree to treat patients or a civil engineering degree to build bridges is essential, right? But do we really need a generic college degree to be considered for jobs such as an office manager or a sales rep? In the US alone, there's more than 70 million workers that do not hold bachelor degrees, but who are skilled in other ways, right? So for instance, we know that food servers have 71% of the skills required for a customer service role. Our store managers have about 56% of the skills required for a sales role. So with skills paths, we're saying, how might we find this food server, a customer service role that pays more, right? So the tools here that we have in place are, we get job seekers to sort of demonstrate their skills by passing a skills assessment test. And then when the recruiter on the other side is looking for people to hire, we integrate this with the recruiting tools to really help surface candidates who have passed these assessment tests. So recruiters know that these folks do have what it takes to get the job, right? So in a nutshell, it just feels like if we can get our workforce from low wage jobs that pay about $30,000 in the US to say middle wage jobs around $70,000, can you just imagine what a massive difference and what a game changer that would be, right, for the world?
Right. Yeah. And I love the stats that you shared around kind of, what skills people already possess, and LinkedIn being able to kind of nurture those skills and help develop those people. I think that could, like you said, have a massive, massive impact. So really incredible work there. All right, great. So let's keep moving along here. So the next question, I would love to go to Sakshi here to talk a little bit about this. The question is, how is LinkedIn helping to mitigate bias within the hiring process?
Yeah, gosh, it's such a complex subject. So when we talk about bias, especially with this group, I want to motivate how convoluted and complex this topic is. When we talk about biases, especially in AI-driven systems, it can enter from so many different ways. You can have let's say the members who are using the platform, either job seekers or recruiters themselves may be biased. It is possible that the way females use the platform is different from how males use the platform. Intrinsically, they want to use it differently. We're not a homogeneous group, and that leads to certain changes downstream. It is possible that we just do not have enough data to learn about a particular group, and that's why our models are not doing as well. Or it could be something even more intrinsic in the model itself. So like when we started embarking on this project, we tried to take a holistic approach of what are the different kinds of biases, because addressing these individual biases also have their own individual nuances. As I said, we do not want all females to act like males, right? That's not the goal. We do not want everyone to be very similar. We also want to be, if we're calling something human bias, you want to be sure that we're not solving for something else versus human bias. So what we do is we like our team, we have been trying to tweeze out these different types of biases and build measurement and mitigation solutions against them. So as we speak today, we have ironed out how to measure algorithmic bias, things that get introduced as a result of AI. And we're doing an audit across LinkedIn on all the new AI, on all the existing AI products, as well as all the new things that are upcoming. And in parallel, we're also like figuring out mitigation solutions. How do we correct for it in a way that can be applied across? And that's what now we're deploying across all the system. This is mainly around the algorithmic side. There are also a lot of other nuances. Few things I would like to add here is when you add fairness intervention. So for example, on the recruiter search, what we did was we made sure when the recruiters see the results, if let's say I'm looking for software engineering, if of all the qualified people, roughly the ratio between, let's say, females to males, and just keeping it simple, of course, is 60 to 40, we would roughly expect that the results that the recruiters see are also 60 to 40. And it's not that, hey, it's 90-10. When I'm talking about the qualified candidate pool. So we added that as a solution, and we're observing what it does. And we're doing a long-term study to understand how does the fairness intervention impact members' behavior? Do recruiters actually change their behavior? Are we seeing differences? We're also trying to see if we improve, for example, diversity in your experience. Does it actually help you get more utility out of LinkedIn as a platform? Could we be doing something that leads to rich getting richer, poor getting poorer behavior? So there are a lot of these other long-term effects we're studying, while also integrating solutions that we know of in the existing AI systems.
Great. Yeah. And as you mentioned, it sounds like very complex and challenging work, but also so important, right? Shweta, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Sakshi was saying, and maybe I can take a little bit of the product twist on this, on what you said, Sakshi. We have quite a few features in our recruiter tools now, where for instance, one of them is in the recruiter tool, we are now able to sort of hide names and photos such that recruiters can now evaluate candidates solely based on their skills or qualifications, not by their social identity or their appearance. Right. Another thing that we've done is we have this tool called LinkedIn Talent Insights that companies use to benchmark themselves against other companies in the industry. And we've introduced a gender tab there. So for instance, if you're hiring for your company and you see that my gender representation is only 34% women versus the rest of my industry is 40% women, then it really gives you a jumping off point on where we are falling behind as compared to the rest of the troops in your industry. And then the last, another one that I can think of is also on the LinkedIn recruiter side. We now show you reporting that shows how your job applications and in-mail messages are performing with respect to gender, so that you know if you're using inclusive tone and language in your outreach. And so if you're using a lot of words like ambitious, I want a hacker, and you're driving away female candidates, you can now see that in your statistics.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Speaking of kind of results and tracking metrics, Sakshi, could you tell me a little bit about kind of how you're measuring the impact of your efforts related to the work that you all are doing?
Yeah. So just maybe tagging on the complexity part. So in fairness, it's an open-ended research right now as to how do you define fair, right? And the definition of fair is it is very different. Even I'm sure like even in this group, it would be very different. Some people want like to equate the outcome, like everyone, maybe females and males should have equal similar outcomes. For some, it is for those who are qualified, we want them to have equal opportunity. There are at least 3 very well-known definitions for fairness that we have been looking into. Unfortunately, and this is an open research problem, unfortunately, they are not consistent with each other. So that is just the beginning of our set of problems. So what we do is we take a step back, we take a holistic approach. What we do is we look at, for every product, how does the funnel move? So starting from, okay, of all the candidates between males and females, how many are looking at jobs, how many are applying to jobs, how many are getting actually responses from recruiters, and how is that funnel shaping up? And if we see strong shifts in between them, can we deep dive to understand what is actually causing it? Is it just intrinsic member behavior, member agency, or is it biases, or is it something on the algorithm side or something on the product side? That's one way to look at it. We also have a suite of other things to measure. So for example, I could say that, hey, tomorrow I am fair between females and males, but what if amongst all the females, all of the benefit is actually going to a very small set of females, right? Like if you would just look at an aggregate stat, you may say, oh, everything looks okay. But if you go deeper and say, hey, all the benefits are concentrated, that's what we call individual fairness. And we're starting to look into that too. So when we are identifying solutions, diving into products, we look at a suite of these metrics and we make a call on a per product basis. And often these are like strong debates, which is of course interesting, but that's at a high level how we think about measuring our impact.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that insight there. All right, great. So as I mentioned, as part of our introduction today, so over 800 million professionals now on LinkedIn. For those of the people on our call today who maybe they're looking for a new job, whether that's active or passive, any recommendations that you can share for job seekers on how to make their profiles stand out to recruiters and or amongst their peers? Monica, I'd love to hear from you here.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. This is an area of passion. I'm constantly talking to job seekers, talking to recruiters, posting on LinkedIn, suggestions here. So I'd say 3 things that you should think about. Your profile. What you want to do on your profile is make sure you have up to date all of your recent experience. If you're able to, don't just say your title and company, put in 1 sentence on what you've accomplished and the value that you've added. Don't shy away from, putting in claims and making it specific, because that's really going to bring to life like the impact that you can have outside of, oh, I got this job, I have the job title. Second, so you got your profile down. Second, use a feature called Open to Work on LinkedIn. And what you can just go to your profile, click on your profile picture, and you'll see the option there to add that you're open to work. You might have seen some people on LinkedIn. It enables this green photo frame around your picture, and you can choose to make that public, or you can choose to just share with recruiters. And we do everything we can to keep recruiters from your own company from seeing that. So it's really your way to like send that bat signal out. I don't know why I just went to a Batman analogy. I have not seen that movie since like 1990, whatever, but it's a discreet way for you to signal that you're looking for opportunities. And from there, you can also really easily indicate, here are the job titles that I'm interested in. Here's how urgently I'm looking. I'm open to remote work or not. And then it'll help you set up a job alert. Job alerts are awesome because they let you go on autopilot. It makes LinkedIn reach out to you when there's an opportunity. And there really is a benefit to being one of the earlier applicants. So do that so you don't have to constantly worry about like, am I missing out on something? And the third one is talk to people. And this is, if you're like me, it's the hardest one because it's like, oh, I can't just do that on my computer, at 11 p.m. on my own. I actually have to reach out to someone and say, hey, I want to learn from you. But that's where the real power comes in terms of being able to help you build those relationships. So what do I mean by talk to people? If there's a company that you're curious about, reach out to someone who's in a similar role to yours or in the role that you're interested in. You can send a custom message through an invitation, or you can send a message if you've LinkedIn Premium, just say, hey, Courtney, I'd love to learn more about like, what does your role look like? Can you spare 15 minutes for a quick chat? Be specific about why, like, Courtney, why am I pinging you? What caught my attention about your profile? And do that on each call. I like to end it with like, do you have any advice for me? Do you think there'd be any roles or anyone else you think I should speak to? So that way you're always like continuing to build the momentum. But it's a great way to get to know more people. I think in general, folks love to be able to help out and feel like, oh, I can offer advice. I do have some expertise. And it'll help you navigate finding a way into companies in addition to applying. Having that connection and having someone there who can help you think about how to navigate the process can be really invaluable. So profile, open to work and search alerts, and then start talking to people.
Amazing. Such great advice. And I like that you clarified too. I'd always been a bit curious about the open to work. I wasn't sure kind of how that worked. So good to know that. Again, I liked your bat signal reference. That's a great way to let people know that you are open to work without necessarily having to share that with your current company. So great. All right, next up, I want to shift gears just a little bit here and talk a little bit more about kind of the culture of support found at LinkedIn. So I'm going to start with Sakshi here, and then I also like to hear from Monica on this. But the question is, how has LinkedIn supported you and allowed you to grow your career?
Yeah, I have LinkedIn is I have been at LinkedIn for 7 years now, and I have transitioned roles here. I have had the best coaching, or like an amazing coach and mentor and champion here. And I have realized the value of all of these here at the company. And like, mind you, I've learned that they're all different. And it's like, if you've not identified what these mean, I would totally encourage you to do that. But at LinkedIn, like I grew from a software engineer to a manager role. And throughout the process, like, everyone around, including folks in my management chain and including the team, has been extremely supportive in the growth. I've had difficult times. There are always low phases. And like I haven't had to shy away from talking about it, for example, to my manager. It's always like I have had a medical situation and they've always been like, okay, yes, like we'll take care of you when you get back and, we're with you. So I like, just not having to worry about that is a huge gain. You can spend your mental cycles on solving the problem. And I think like it really takes away a lot of load from you and help you focus and be more motivated towards the problem. Towards the 6-year mark, when I felt like, hey, I was in trust and security before, and I felt like, okay, I was plateauing. It was not, to be honest, a difficult conversation for me to have with my manager and say, hey, I feel like I could, steepen my learning curve again. Like, do you have other opportunities in mind? And which is something I feel like may not be very comfortable in many situations in many companies, but at LinkedIn, next place, speaking about it is encouraged. Even as a manager myself, I truly believe that only when the person is happy that you're working with and you're happy, that's the only situation you're going to get the best output for everyone. And I have seen it at works, and I've transitioned to a new role within the company. So in terms of support, I've like my takeaways, I've always been able to speak up, which itself is a huge benefit, and find the support behind me always. So yeah.
Great. Yeah, I love what you mentioned about the importance of finding a mentor, and then also too, just hearing that, LinkedIn does create a space where those conversations are welcomed. So really wonderful stuff. Great. Monica, 9 years. Let us hear a little bit about, for you, kind of what that support has looked like.
Yeah, why am I still here after 9 years? A lot of what Sakshi said resonated in terms of like, I have a short attention span, so it amazes me the most that I'm still here. And I'd say, like, whether at LinkedIn or wherever you're looking, finding a place that really takes bets on people and sees potential and like, turns that spark into a flame versus, here's the bar, you don't meet, whatever. I came into LinkedIn in a marketing role Still not sure why I got hired into a marketing role, because I didn't have any direct experience, but I think it was that like they saw, hey, here, you know, we were talking a little bit about skills first hiring. Here are these skills that you've demonstrated in other areas, and like, yeah, you're missing that one, but you'll get there. So it started with that first hiring manager really taking a bet on me, and then I then moved into product management. And that was another, I think the other part of it that has been helpful for me is, you know, taking ownership. And I think LinkedIn really encourages this culture of ownership, whether it was like, how do I get into product, even if there wasn't like a super clear, you know, just do 1, 2, 3 path. I felt really encouraged and empowered to let me pick up projects. Let me, you know, see how I can lean into doing the role before I even have the role. And then when I was a PM interested in getting into people management, it also is like, there's not just necessarily 1, 2, 3 path, but my manager was really supportive. And I think the environment at LinkedIn is very much like, hey, help us understand what the opportunity is, and we'll give you a chance to realize that opportunity. So for me, it was, we saw there was more that we could do to help job seekers, to help you know, to help employers, and was able to put that together. And again, just feeling the energy of LinkedIn, taking bets on people. So I'd say whether that is at LinkedIn or elsewhere, I would really think about finding an environment where you can feel supported and where you can, you know, be given that chance to grow into the next thing. Because if you're anything like me, you know, as soon as you feel like, oh, I got it, then you're like, oh, now I'm bored. I want to do the next thing. So definitely find somewhere where you can see that evidence of like people moving around or taking on new challenges.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Great. So we've heard a little bit so far today about kind of the culture of support at LinkedIn, kind of how they're nurturing employees, allowing them to grow, move across the company. Shweta, I would love to hear from you, kind of what do you think differentiates LinkedIn from other tech companies? And then ultimately kind of what has kept you there?
Yeah, you know, when Monica was speaking, it just resonated with me so much. I have a very short attention span here as well. And I've worked at 5 or 6 different companies now in tech, big companies, small ones, and now I'm at LinkedIn. I can safely say from all of the sampling that I've done that this company is several notches above on how much emphasis we put on each individual's needs and desires. I feel like this is a well-kept secret in tech, like this place. It's just, we say this a lot, like talent is our #1 priority, and we see it in action every single day. I know that when I am absent from a room, there's a bunch of leaders vouching for me behind my back, really talking about how I can be happier, not just in my role, but overall in my life. And this is in some ways also one of the few companies where I felt safe sort of sharing with my team, I am overwhelmed, I need help. And honestly, the focus on mental health and mental well-being is super strong, right? Like, not only do we have an unlimited vacation policy, but there's also like earlier this year, the whole company took a week off in April for mental health. Then we take another week off in summer for July break. We take another week off in December. And it's like, we're so incredibly spoiled in some ways. And if all of this sounds like way too sort of like, you know, kumbaya, it's not. Right? Like, we do also build and launch a lot of products all the time, but we just managed to find this like incredible balance where it just works out.
Yeah, I know I had seen that you all do that mental health week. So important right now. I think that mental health is at the forefront of so many conversations, and it's wonderful to see, you know, companies like LinkedIn kind of setting that precedent. I think it's more important than ever. Obviously, kind of the buzzword of the year has been burnout. So I have to assume that, you know, LinkedIn is really, you know, helping to combat some of that with things like those additional days off. So really great stuff there. All right, great. So for those of kind of our audience who may be interested in a career at LinkedIn, let's go to Monica here. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what skills and or traits you think are keys to success in working at LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And I think everyone at LinkedIn will have a slightly different answer. There's some baseline around our values, like sense of humor. But for me, I've seen people who really thrive. Comes down to three things. One is you're really curious. You want to understand what's going on, what's the problem, what does the user need, what does the customer need? And with that curiosity, you bring a bias towards action. I'm a very impatient person. Sakshi and I have worked together, and she just reminded me, she's like, yes, I remember you telling me this before. But like not, so that brings me into the third one, is like, you also need to be great to work with, because you can't just like be impatient and be like, what's going on, whatever. And I think bringing together the curiosity, the impatience and bias towards action of like, okay, now I have this insight, this understanding, what do I do with it? What do I do about it? And relationships are absolutely key, because, you know, I don't think, I'm probably overstating this, but I don't think anyone at LinkedIn has ever really done anything completely themselves. It's always, hey, someone else inspired that idea, or you know, they cheerleaded me on, or they reviewed the code, or they, you know, gave feedback, or they built the thing that I'm building on top of. So we say at LinkedIn, relationships matter. And I guess it's probably part of, you know, we're at the end of the day, we're a social or professional network, but that is so key in building relationships. And that really means not just transactional relationships, but showing, hey, I understand what matters to you, and I'm trying to solve for that, and not just for this metric, this business goal, or what have you. So those would be the ones that I've seen are really important.
Awesome. Sakshi, I'd like to hear from you, your perspective on this, kind of as it relates to your role in engineering.
Yeah, and so I feel like most of the traits which Monica, or all the traits which Monica mentioned, like they translate extremely well on engineering side. From my experience, again, I've seen the people who thrive are the ones who take ownership of the problem. And when I say ownership of the problem, like they truly understand where it fits in the larger ecosystem, why as LinkedIn we should care about it. The reason being is like coming from an AI team, often the bias could be, hey, we want to use the next coolest and the brightest thing in as a solution, and the answer need not be there. The answer could be, hey, something simple may just work. And I've always appreciated someone who's solving the problem for the problem solving and is identifying the right solution instead of using a tool and then applying it everywhere. That is one thing that has worked really well in the company. The other thing is, which I strongly believe in, is speaking up. Often, like maybe like especially as females, because we probably like we tend to be nicer, or tend to like not hurt anyone's feelings, or we doubt ourselves whether what we're thinking could be wrong. I've been very lucky to have really good managers and mentors, but I have always benefited from speaking up, whether it is something that I'm concerned about in terms of the product change, or in terms of the engineering solution taken. I have spoken up, and I've had like open, honest, constructive discussion is a core theme at LinkedIn. And because of that, I've not had a challenge, like I've not had a pushback, and it has encouraged me even more. And often it leads to changes and perspectives which others may not have in the room. On that front too, but also on the front of just speaking within your team, like to your reports, being as honest as possible, and even managing upwards. We tend to not ask enough, but I feel like whenever I've been able to raise my concerns and opinions, it has been absorbed with well intention and addressed. So that is the other thing which I strongly encourage within my team as well, both in terms of conversations on the problem itself, or something which is less technical and more on how your growth lies within the company.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and so great to hear that you feel encouraged to speak up, use your voice. I think that's so important right now for women. As you mentioned, I think we all struggle with that. So having that space where you feel open to sharing thoughts, feedback, idea, really, really great. So we have a few more minutes here. Just a quick reminder to our audience, if you do have questions for our panelists, please use that Q&A box. I see them coming in, so we'll get to those in just a second. But my last question here, I want to go to Monica. You shared a little bit about, here's how to kind of tailor your profile. You shared a little bit about some of those skills and traits that, you all are looking for at LinkedIn. Outside of that, any other advice that you can share to women who maybe looking to work at LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think part of it picks up on the theme Sakshi was just talking about around speaking up. I'd say like put your hat in the ring. I get a lot of outreach on LinkedIn. Actually, to be clear, I'm not necessarily recommending exactly this, but I get a lot of outreach, and I do notice that it tends to be biased towards men who are saying, "Hey, Monica, can I grab a coffee chat? Your profile looks amazing." Find people at LinkedIn who you really want to learn from or you're curious about, or, hey, your path is inspiring because of X and Y and Z, and reach out to them just to learn, what their experience is like. Obviously, Sakshi, Shweta, and I have all found LinkedIn's a really great fit, but it may not be a fit for everyone. And the more you can understand that and find, insights to help you navigate that, and then definitely apply. And just because you don't get it the first time, just because you don't get in the second time, doesn't mean you won't get in, the third time. Definitely be persistent and ask, as you're going through the process, hey, what can I do? What was the feedback? How can I be better? If you do interview with LinkedIn, definitely ask your recruiter that you're working with for that feedback. Have an open mindset in terms of your growth and how you can figure out, oh, here is the right opportunity for me, or, oh, maybe I need to make a 2-step move into a given role, whether LinkedIn's your dream company or dream job or elsewhere. Really just try to figure out, like, there are lots of different ways in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Monica. Awesome. So great conversation. We do want to go ahead and shift gears, and we're going to take some questions from our audience. So we'll get to as many of these as we can. The first one, and Shweta, I think this one's probably suited for you. The question is, the big question around equity and connection within a workplace now is how remote workers get a level playing field along with hybrid or in-person workers. How do you see LinkedIn playing a role here? And any hints that you can share from the LinkedIn roadmap?
Ooh, the LinkedIn roadmap. Monica, can I put you on the spot on the roadmap? I can talk a lot about what LinkedIn is doing internally as a company for remote and hybrid, but what's on our roadmap for other companies? I will have to think a little bit hard about that.
How different companies are thinking about remote and hybrid work.
Right.
We are constantly surveying both members and companies. And I don't think anything that I'm going to share is going to be a big surprise, which is a lot of companies are figuring it out. I think we're seeing, some, and it tends to be in more in tech sector where, it's really tough to hire talent, which I realize may not really land with all of us when we're job seeking. We're like, is it hard to hire? I'm right here. But, companies are struggling to hire. So that's part of the reason they're like, you know what? I need to be flexible. I need to recognize that this will enable me to hire a different set of employees and appeal to a different set of employees by having that flexibility. But in certain industries like finance, for example, we are seeing more focus on in-person and, less of the, let me just jump to meet the bar of what all the big tech brands are doing to be able to compete for talent. But I think we're really going to see, I don't have a crystal ball, sadly. I think we're going to see how it pans out in terms of some companies coming back to work and appreciating that in-person connection, but realizing that, we need to figure out how hybrid will work to bring everyone along. But I'd say in general, we've seen a huge increase in remote job postings on LinkedIn. There's a little bit more interest from job seekers in remote work if we look at the usage of search filters. And I think that'll probably continue to be the case for a little while. But there's definitely been a surge in growth there, even in the last couple of months and going back to the beginning of the pandemic, that we're expecting that trend to continue. But anyone's call to exactly how it pans out over time.
Okay, awesome. All right, next question is, has LinkedIn changed its job posting templates or matching processes to enable skills first hiring? Who would like to take that one?
Shweta, were you gonna?
No, go ahead, Monica, and then I'll add on to what you're about to say because I have something to say.
Great. at the core of how we match job seekers to jobs, skills is really a very significant part of that. And I'd say what we're trying to do is help educate the hirer on the starting end. You know, I say, hey, my team is hiring for a principal PM right now. What exactly do we need that candidate to have on day zero versus, you know what, you can learn this, you can grow into this if you have these adjacent skills or these adjacent experiences. So in our products, we're trying to help give that feedback back to the customer. Hey, you're setting this really narrow definition. Here's the impact that's going to have on your time to hire, the available talent pool, and try to coach them. And then we're trying to help job seekers on the other side be really transparent about what are the skills required for a given job, help them gain those skills through, you know, LinkedIn Learning courses or other means to say, you know what, you really do need to be able to have a baseline level of proficiency in this tool to be able to be a competitive candidate. But we're trying to help close the gap on both sides, because it really is, at the end of the day, you know, it's a match. It's the two sides coming together. So we need the employer to have that buy-in and understanding. Oh, that's why that's the right, you know, qualifications needed. And sometimes to encourage the job seeker, yeah, throw your hat in the ring or brush up on this skill and then throw your hat in the ring.
Great. Shweta, you have something to add
I
there?
was just going to add in, and internally at LinkedIn, we are doing quite a few things. For instance, like individual hiring managers, when we hire, I always like to say that the job requirement should not be our gatekeeper. That's what interviews are for, right? And so just like Monica was saying, keep those job requirements really succinct and what can be learned in the job and what is really a must-have. And so just put in like 2 or 3 things, not the 25 different things that you are looking for, and then let candidates come in. And then once you speak to the candidates, you'll see that some people, even though they haven't gone to school for it, have the skills to do the job. So we do that quite a bit, and especially for the hard to fill roles, because some of these roles can be just because either we're looking for a diverse slate of candidates or the roles are a little more unique or niche. We are trying to do that as much as possible inside as well.
Okay, wonderful.
Can I add a plug here for job seekers here that you do not have to satisfy each and everything that is written in the qualification before applying. We see this all the time. So if you're out there looking for jobs, like it's okay. Like it's okay if you satisfy 70-80%, just go for it.
Yeah, and I know we talk about that a lot here at Fairygodboss, is that oftentimes, you know, men, they see a role, they meet 50% of the qualifications, they're going to apply. Oftentimes women, if they don't meet 100%, they're not going to apply. So that's great advice. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Sakshi. Speaking of, so going back to Sakshi and what you talked about mitigating bias, we had a question from our audience. And really what they're saying here is that many platform problems are oftentimes actually human problems, right? So what is the goal in initiatives to mitigate bias, especially when societal norms can be so enduring, as we've all experienced within the past few years?
Yes. So I'll put forward one thought experiment, and I'll then put forward maybe one thing that we're doing. So for example, let's say if we know that recruiters could be biased, but let's say that is the case. We observe that, hey, they're picking up more males than females. But to be honest, it is really difficult for us to know if, let's say, given a profile, whether they're looking up and researching somewhere else and then making that decision, and that decision is not biased, or decision is more informed. It is really difficult to have a ground truth to say that, hey, no, this person was actually qualified for your job, for your company, and why didn't you pick it? So just calling out some of the nuances as to how teasing out bias from being more informed could be difficult. Now, having said this, we have the luxury of a platform and experimentation. So we are trying to quantify and see human biases. One example being, we're trying to see if we can anonymize the profiles, for example, and then measure, does it impact behavior, right? Like if you cannot see your face and if you do not see your name, so the perception of your gender is minimized, does it actually cause a change in what you do? So that's how we're trying to quantify. In terms of actually addressing it, we do know that, for example, if if let's say a hiring manager has not been exposed to someone from a particular profile, they may not even take a bet on whether they may be qualified for the job. So part of the problem is just exposure, that they have just never been exposed to people of like from that background. And since they've never been exposed and that they never clicked on it, our algorithms are not learning that you want them either. So that's not helping. So one thing that we're experimenting with is, can we introduce exposure of more diverse set of candidates on a small set and see if that is helping the longer term engagement with that community from the recruiters, like trying to address an exposure problem. Hopefully that addresses the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, it's tough to measure. It's tough to put processes in place. At the end of the day, we are all humans. So I'm glad to hear that there are some things you all are working on along those lines. Great. So the next question, and I think that this is very timely. So there's a lot of talk in the news and the media around this whole idea of the Great Resignation. The question from our audience is, they want to hear, how has the Great Resignation affected the recruiting process? What major changes have you seen?
I can jump in on that one. It has definitely changed the landscape for talent. It's really remarkable to think back from the beginning of the pandemic, where so many workers across all levels were impacted by layoffs, by hiring freezes, to where we're at now, where hiring confidence has come back. A lot of employees, and this has happened to me. I was on mat leave over the summer and was like, what do I really want to do? This is my chance. And fortunately for me, the answer was like, no, I'm in the right role. But I think people are reflecting more on, what am I doing it for? What really matters to me? And we're seeing on the recruiter side, you might think, hey, this means that roles are struggling to get filled because there are fewer candidates. But generally what we're seeing is companies are still hiring even though they have fewer candidates. So it's better odds for job seekers when you are applying to jobs, because the rate of filling those roles is similar, but you have less competition, because so many, I'd say like a lot of the dynamic is people are not job seeking at the same rate. So it's not just about the resignation, it's about the intent to job seek. And I think people are holding back on that because, hey, I really need to wait for the right opportunity. It's challenging to onboard in a remote environment, or I want to understand how the remote work flexibility is going to net out. I don't want to move somewhere until I have more clarity on that. But overall, at LinkedIn as a company, as an example, we're definitely looking at, hey, that thing I was mentioning before, what do we really need, and trying to get more focused on the requirements so we can get a better look at the really qualified pool of talent versus the folks that we may have filtered to but unintentionally filtered out great talent as a result. So I think that's a lot of what we're seeing in terms of how employers are responding, and maybe some tips for how you can think about navigating and timing your own search.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Monica. All right, great. So we just have a few minutes left. Thank you for everyone who chatted in your questions. If we didn't get to, we are so sorry. I will share these with the LinkedIn team. So there may be an opportunity that they can follow up with you and answer some of those more specific questions. To end today, we like to always end with our lightning round. So a couple quick questions here. All of you today have shared a lot of wonderful advice for our audience. I would love to hear, what is the best piece of advice someone's ever given you? Let's go to Shweta first. Putting you on the spot.
Best piece of advice. Early on in my career, someone said to me, when in doubt, take the leap. Everything good happens outside your comfort zone. And that's really stuck with me. And now whenever I'm in doubt, I do take the leap. And I realize that it is very, very uncomfortable, and it's really great.
Awesome. Sakshi, what about you? Best advice?
Trust your intent. I believe like even if the execution is wrong, it is okay. And I've learned to trust my intent and grow with it. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have gone for those many conversations that I did. So, and intent is something that nearly and dearly, and that it's right. So it just gives me a lot of confidence knowing that I mean well in having like in taking opportunities and in making leaps. So yeah.
Wonderful. Monica, what about you?
I think mine was from a manager whose philosophy was like lead with love. And as a like fairly quantitative person, that really like stuck with me from, hey, how do we just invest in caring about the person and trying to understand them, and like being generous to your team and your colleagues just really goes a long way. So that's one that I keep with me.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, great. And then our last question for our lightning round. So at Fairygodboss, we have seen that women oftentimes don't feel comfortable enough or taking ownership of some of the amazing things that they achieve. So we do this thing, we call it our brag sessions. Really here you can share something in your personal life, your professional life, whatever you're comfortable with. Role model for us, and let's go to each of you and hear your brag. And Monica, so sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You're going to kick us off.
I both love and cringe at this question, but
right?
I'm really proud. I lead the LinkedIn Jobs product, which helps millions of people get jobs every day, which under my leadership has grown into like a multi-billion-dollar business. So that's pretty cool. But I'm really uncomfortable to say.
Yes, we look at you. That's
me.
Amazing. Yes, I love it. Take that ownership. You got that. All right, great. Sakshi, what's your brag?
I love it, Monica. Yeah, mine is at this time, like for me, I am just proud of the fact that I have been able to manage through a huge responsibility, which was new to me, for setting up a new team, a new charter in a big setup, and dealing with the stress and both of anxiety and stress and mental health issues that come with it. I'm just proud of the fact that I was able to like objectively look at it and solve it. So yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations. And last but not least, Shweta, give us your brag to
that
end
was
us
so
today.
wholesome, Sakshi. Thank you. So me, I am a rusty but certified mixologist. I'm a makeup artist. I'm a diver, now shoemaking, and then I've served on the board of many nonprofits. This is so uncomfortable to say.
I love it. You're a woman of many talents. I think it's really inspiring. All right, everyone. Well, we had a ton of engagement in the chat. It sounds like everyone really enjoyed our conversation, and we hope that this encourages you all to brag about your accomplishments. Monica, Sakshi, and Shweta, thank you so much again for being here today. Thanks everyone for joining, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. We'll talk to you all soon.